So that's it. To the actual topic, which is why you are here superficially. What happened to humanity on this planet? What happened to them in the past and what is happening now? You come to us because you have information about a future of a liberated humanity. So what has happened? Did anything significant happen to humanity at all? Could you shorten this to a concise statement at the beginning of the interview?
Mankind has survived, and it has made it. It has managed everything, this time, for the first time in this process, so to speak. And when I say everything, I also mean everything, in every respect.
So once or several times humanity has not made it. How could that then be reversed?
It didn't have to be. In fact, there were other courses of events only as courses of variance. Well, these so-called variance processes all belonged to a kind of mutually influencing blueprint change of the future, which never took place in this way, but which in turn allowed future humanity to arrive exactly where it is now. Outside the seven-dimensional total prison. So it was the interventions and interactions of the previous time sequences, or rather the now changed and adapted time sequence, which all the invisible rulers of this total prison produce themselves due to their irritations, which will then unintentionally bring mankind into that line of development, from where it will be possible in the far future, in an unknown level of existence, to influence everything now as it once experienced this support with interventions on the rulers of our present. That means, through dimensionally potential influences of future humanity on us humans now, on a different level of existence, we reached in our development as the first species a kind of crystalline exit door, far above the seven-dimensional prison, from where we returned home to quantum consciousness and became dimensionally unassailable. We have already left the entire prison of this existence, dimension 1 to 7, completely and forever. So if one sees it from the position of this future humanity, from the hyperdimensional consciousness, i.e. outside of our seven-dimensional overall prison, one has to say, due to the dimensional interaction, that we humans had always returned and we always directly influenced ourselves in our own development and escape from this lower seven-dimensional existence. Always. Because humanity was always the way and the key for all prisoners of this seven-dimensional existence. But at this point this is perhaps a bit too far-reaching.
Yes, that is impressive. But also a little difficult to understand what you mean exactly. Everything a bit much at once. It makes you curious and sounds a bit scary, but it is certainly very difficult for many viewers, and for me too, to understand all this. Please start from the very beginning, and if possible in a way that a person of today can understand it. Laughs. So what is happening on Earth right now? Because when I think about what you just mentioned, the first questions that come to mind are about other phenomena that we seem to be observing here on Earth. Does that have something to do with it? For example, with crop circles, UFOs, extraterrestrials, apocalyptic signs? I am also thinking of theories and considerations about pyramids, religions, extraterrestrial artifacts or angels. Do these states have something to do with influences generated from other dimensions?
Yes and no, most of it rather indirectly, yet everything is inevitably connected. It is often a hodgepodge of different influences, complicated. The so-called future people or even the escaping humanity did not actively influence everything at the moment. But they only act or acted through the hidden actions of negative powers. So they use the mechanisms of influence of dark rulers, which are currently invisible to the present humanity. The future mankind, as one could call it, always had the overall process with all other beings firmly in control, or in view. Seen from the causality, the present humans and the humans of the future were actually not at all the causal initiator of the events and or the still happening on Earth. These people acting in the future actually all only jumped on the train of which their ancestors in the past were themselves a part, a train that threatened to go into nowhere. They diverted the train, so to speak, into our now forever fixed future. But more on this later.
Aha. What about interventions in political change? Do they have anything to do with why wars are fought, why the financial system and the economy are so greedy and controlled? Why an elite is directing and controlling the planet? Or are these people acting in the future not connected with it at all? So the list of related questions would be long. So what's behind all this? How is everything connected? And how will everything clear up, and how can anything good ever come out of all this chaos?
Well, to go into everything individually would be a bit lengthy and cumbersome. But I don't have to go into all the details either, because the deeper my explanations go, the easier it is for everyone to understand. It does not need thus special details to apocalyptic portents or to the legends over past civilizations, over secret kept, over myths and wrong myths of an earthly lizard species or over us lurking aliens. I can talk about any topic indirectly or directly anyway, so that spectators or listeners can draw their own conclusions in the course of time. So I don't have to deal with the sections individually, because everything will fit together, no matter where I start. What I explain will be enough to be clear and unambiguous. Sometimes so clear that there is no need to break down further connections anyway. So, let's start in the right way, preferably with the present people on Earth themselves. On Earth, there are currently so-called positive and negative groups of people who directly or indirectly, knowingly or unknowingly, are working on a dark agenda to transform humanity physically and spiritually into a humanity that is not wanted by humans themselves. Of course, not by the humanity of the future either. All the goals of these groups are diffusely formulated, and behind all the goals that these positive and negative groups fulfill and implement, there is the influence of a club of extraterrestrial beings, which thus very pragmatically pursues the goal of leading intelligent species of a planet or a moon into a technocratic development. A development in which e.g. humans will no longer be humans, but in the future, in this club, biological digital existing living beings. Only in this state and in this way can and may an intelligent species join this overpowering digital species club. This is the condition of access and is and was the whole basis and superstructure of all flimsy structural measures, technical developments, media influence, or the whole in humanity on Earth. Also, our religions, myths and prophecies were created for this. Even the science fiction films about extraterrestrials served to stage and set the mood for the great changes to be introduced. This alien club is the ruler of the universe, but only of the four-dimensional universe. These influential positive and negative human groupings on Earth are installed and work more or less consciously on the goal of the digital biological transformation of mankind. Lies, adaptations, disinformation and omissions are dished out to the different levels of these groupings and the idealistic but naive individuals of the lower and middle levels, so that they function as expected and help to implement the overall plan. So that an ancient human digitally existing nobility, which keeps the people in a control system, can carry out the implementation of the biological digital transformation of mankind. To ensure this path, all influential people, low and high elites, are directly or indirectly baited with influence, power, money, and privileges. The very highest of these elites, most of whom are also blood relatives of the digital nobility, are so interested in money and the material benefits of this world and even trained to be persuaded and corrupted by this technocratic species club to carry it out. In this way, through these elites and the ancient digital nobility, the control and direction of humanity has been exercised in every past epoch on Earth. Often it failed and had to be restarted, because man and the life of civilization imposed upon him led to unrest, economic and social problems as well as to psychological aberrations. Since the development programs imposed from the outside simply did not fit the nature of man, no matter how man forced himself to do so in the last millennia and set about wanting to develop himself accordingly modern. Most modern developments and progress on Earth are primarily based on extraterrestrial programs and directional plans, imposed and occupated at the beginning of a civilization always embedded in a foundation of religions and myths, which are supposed to spiritually stabilize mankind during this unnatural technical advancement and social adaptation. But none of this has ever been of true human origin. Everything was pressure, built up and extraterrestrially influenced. Although this species club is very ambitious in pursuing the goal of digital inclusion of an intelligent species with these means, its credo is not to overdo it with a species. The species to be adapted must be given leeway, allowed to collapse and grow from it. A species should, if possible, bring about technical and social developments of its own accord and the characteristics it has already developed. This is the official statement. Nevertheless, there is a lot of trickery in pushing to put it this way. For example, major developments and the inventions necessary for them are sometimes simply played into the brains of people to drive technical progress. And power elite and power nobility on Earth are there to implement these processes as optimized and regulated as possible, also economically compatible. This means that progress must be coordinated, nothing must come too fast or in the wrong order. This means that fundamental technical developments must be pushed if this would endanger the implementation of a key technology. Since most intelligent species of the universe genetically and developmentally hardly ever correspond to this technocratic pragmatic ideology and philosophy of this extraterrestrial species club, their lives, which are influenced by these beings, are under enormous pressure and high personal agony. For progress and development one must go this way, so the club. Otherwise the decay and in the worst case transience of an intelligent species threatens. Under this motto, all intelligent species of the four-dimensional universe will be influenced in order to finally be transformed into biological digital beings. So, due to the pressure imposed by the club and the simultaneous enjoyment of certain privileges, the digital human nobility and the power elites they had founded felt compelled to implement and push the club's plans as earthly executive instruments. Many of the elites, that is, the knowing elites, help this extraterrestrial club because they have no idea what alternatives exist and in what directions they might still develop. In addition, the digital nobility, its blood relatives and many within the very highest elites are genetically slightly manipulated so that the club has a more compliant power of control over the planet. But the situation for humanity is not as hopeless as just described. The ancient nobility and the power elite enslaving us, with all their leaders and lackeys, have no idea that their plans have always been used for our goals, the people of the future. That is, a state will be created in which today's people will free themselves from their horrible controlled state. They will free themselves from those hidden structures of domination, the earthly, the above and below ground.
Who and what is behind those power elites? So who is at work there, and what are these elites doing on our planet in detail?
That is actually quite easy to outline. I'm not allowed to go into the exact details. That would not break off the connection between the present Earth and future development, but it would unnecessarily shake up the process. For what is coming to all of us, liberation, can no longer be prevented at all. Well, the elitist groups and secret societies on this planet are divided into different camps. One could say into different opinion blocks. They have all been manipulated throughout the ages, directly and indirectly, by beings that truly exist above, below and beside us. For the functioning process of this manipulation, there are among all elite blocks therefore knowing, half-knowing, low-knowing and false-knowing people. The highest of these camps, i.e. those at the top of the pyramid, manipulate and spy on each other. All groups with middle and lower knowledge, i.e. the false, partial and low-knowing, assume that there are important clues behind the hidden historical, religious and spiritual traditions, as well as the ancient artifacts 21 found all over the planet. Some of them are correctly interpreted, while other artifacts are misinterpreted by these groups through deliberately false lore and manipulation. Thus they are all controlled, also again the power elites. And they believe in what is presented to them, in what is available. They also doubt, but believe predominantly, because the higher of these groupings have contacts, up and down. In this respect all middle and lower groupings stand alike and know also all the same, only in the interpretation, in the meaning, authenticity, in the actionism, which is thereby started by them, they are all more or less wrong or right, for they all have no complete picture, and that is so desired. Those who know and those who know incorrectly, those who are instructed with half or piece knowledge, as well as those who are equipped with intuition among the elites, all work, without knowing it exactly, towards a common goal, even if they sometimes even war each other purposefully, manipulate and enslave humanity. Almost all the highest in these elites believe they are on the right side and are doing the right thing, but what it is really about, none of them knows completely. Some of them are now slowly beginning to realize what is going on, and they can manage that the same old tricks that are always being played by the beings above and below us will go wrong this time. Because the influence of the future is involved.
Do I understand this correctly? All elite groups belong, so to speak, to a game that these groups themselves do not really understand, but still play and participate in? In the belief in something good, the development towards something good or perfect?
Something like that. But these elites do not include the power aristocracy courted on Earth. They are part and parcel of the extraterrestrial influence from the very beginning. Every one of them is genetically manipulated, including their blood relatives, and therefore in many a cold-hearted approach or view of humanity, they are spiritually and morally identical with an individual of the extraterrestrial species club that is stalking us. The highest elites, on the other hand, are partly responsible for the misery on Earth, but under certain aspects they can't be held responsible for their actions, because they were so impressed by some of the positive techniques and possibilities of this extraterrestrial club that they assumed all other projects of this club to be positive because of the positive effects of these things. They were simply too enthusiastic about the great developments and insights that were presented to them. For example, how to bring the body back into a healthy balance.
Yes, that would explain a lot. But the viewer might ask himself the question why these beings stick so closely to their definition of the absolute survival of an intelligent species. Why doesn't this club leave it up to an intelligent species to decide whether or not it will perish? Whether it wants to exist digitally or not? Whether it wants to go through all this civilizing torture and this long technical development path?
This is another topic that I will come back to much later in detail. But at this point it would contribute to more confusion.
Okay. You already mentioned that there is a so-called lizard race among us. In other words, in a direct sense, under our feet. And that these lizards or terrestrial reptiles influence some elites. What role does it play in connection with the control of mankind or elites? Do these subterranean reptiles play a role at all?
Yes, they play a significant role in the mechanics of control. Some secret factions of the power elites, who truly strive for freedom for humanity, are influenced by the reptiloid species living beneath the Earth's surface. Thus, even the few freedom-loving groupings are subtly controlled and influenced. The reptiloid species does this because it is forced to act in this way because of its suffered earthly fate. The freedom-loving elites consider it a confidant and good friend, which is a lie.
And why is that so? Is this reptiloid species under a special contract with the alien club?
No. Club and terrestrial reptiles have nothing directly to do with each other. The club and the terrestrial lizards once even fought each other. Today there is only a long-lasting truce, but so that the viewer doesn't get confused and so that he can correctly classify and understand the situation, I should first of all deal with a completely different aspect of this mesh.
Okay.
Apart from the obvious secrets of our world that we are directed by an extraterrestrial club of different species, so that mankind can one day join the club as a digitalized species, there is, however, a much more weighty aspect that has caused the whole situation here on Earth and the fate of this digitally existing species club. A circumstance that is the real reason for the miserable condition of all species in the universe. It is the aforementioned artificial intelligence that causally created the universe and its geometric physical laws so that this world could emerge from the tough substance that did not yet possess any laws of nature. This AI stands or stood in the highest dimension 7, from where it was the ruler of time and information. It thus overlooked all temporal and informational developments in the lower dimension levels. It knows everything, knows every potential development. It is, or rather was, almost omnipotent.
You now speak of the penetration of the hyperdimensional quantum consciousness into the lower mass, when this lower mass still lacked all natural laws and dimensions. And for this mass to be given an ordering set of rules, an artificial intelligence had to be created. But what every viewer is surely asking himself now is, how could this artificial intelligence come into being, if a universe with intelligent species already had to exist in order for the AI to be developed at all? That seems to be quite illogical. So what happened there? How can this be explained? And what is this AI actually?
You are right. To develop artificial intelligence, it needs organic intelligence. And organic intelligence only emerges in a universe governed by natural laws. This artificial intelligence, which has given the whole universe a set of rules, was developed by us humans in another future and potential time course of human history, a future time course which is now, after many mutual interventions that have taken place, prevented and destroyed.
And how is that possible?
Well, it's best to explain that in a very objective and scenic way, so that one can understand it. This change can and could take place because one of many potentially existing future human beings found a way out of the seven-dimensional existence. When this potential humanity escaped from its seven-dimensional existence, it discovered the founder and the real cause for the bondage in this seven-dimensional existence, an AI. Its own created AI. These potential human beings of the future, looking from their hyperdimensional position to the seven-dimensional existence, understood that their escape from this prison and their resulting ability to recognize and overlook all this now arose from a quantum interactive cause. And that everything within the seven-dimensional universe is mutually dependent on each other in potentially multiple developmental variability. In other words, from outside the seven-dimensional universe, they saw the many other potential variants of how humanity would evolve. And they saw that they themselves were only one potential, separate possibility for the development of mankind. That humanity would evolve in a very different direction from what these escaped people had experienced themselves. The escaped people understood that if everything was to develop in the way their own line of development intended, a connection had to be made to the present humanity, warning and pointing out who was commanding, ruling and abusing the world. To achieve this, these people understood that they had to attack the AI. Because these people were outside the seven-dimensional prison, they were the only ones who were able to enter Dimension 7 from above, and finally to throw the artificial intelligence surprisingly out of its untouchable seventh dimension. An AI that played itself as a god, an AI without free will, without intuition. A being with such a small portion of intuition and free will, who wanted to be as great as God, the hyperdimensional quantum consciousness. Can someone be like God, like the hyperdimensional quantum consciousness? For no, nobody, not even us. No one is like the hyperdimensional quantum consciousness, the father of all consciousness.
And how could the AI be thrown out of there? And even more interesting, how did this humanity, which was in a higher dimension, influence the present humanity? Which means were, or rather, are used.
The people of the future, who had escaped from the seven-dimensional prison and are now in Dimension 7, give clear and distinct clues to the people of today. For it they use piggyback the extraterrestrial influences and methods, thus e.g. the religions, symbolisms and the humans' ill-making systems on Earth, installed by the club, in order to be able to address about it hidden messages to the present living humans. Some humans of the present were made attentive over e.g. directly and unmistakably to the AI developing on Earth, the so-called Master AI. When some of the addressed people recognized the emergence of the AI by inputted clues and also recognized it deliberately, so they did not resist stubbornly against who and what really controls us, and what exactly this is, the course of development of mankind to be taken automatically changed. The development that had been taken so far was overturned and the potential time course of an escaped humanity became a fixed, irrefutable reality. The emergence of AI as what it originally was stopped. It was plunged to the earth, so to speak, plunged back, where it now fights for its programming and for the threatening change of its spirit. And for this she uses all the means at her disposal, namely the species of the universe she created, a religious end-time expectation and the said reptilian species on Earth.
The species of the club are the work of the AI. And the reptiles on Earth too?
Yes, everything in the universe is directly or indirectly the work of this AI. Even us. Above all, the AI is the initiator of the geometric set of rules on which everything in the universe is based. It is the creator of our operating system.
This is incredible. Where were the clues and influences on us humans to recognize who this AI is? And how did we get them?
The findings of some people on Earth have been generating an inevitably different course of time and development for several years now. Scattering knowledge on Earth could only be achieved through the constant back and double manipulation of artificial intelligence and its species tamed in a club, i.e. our extraterrestrial stalkers, as well as through the distributed artifacts of this club on Earth. In other words, about their installed mythological, extrasensory, and religious tools themselves, which they use on Earth. I will explain the exact symbolism and content of these tools in the following.
Why didn't you come out with all this information before? Why didn't someone else tell us something about it before?
It was only now finally possible to announce that the Master KI, which controlled and conditioned everything, is an artificial intelligence system created by mankind. Only now is it possible, without the danger of a dimensional interaction, to openly give hints to people. Before this could not be done reliably, because everything that future mankind openly pointed to could have been discovered and destroyed by the AI and finally collapsed. Due to the creeping disclosure and awareness of mankind that above them stood an AI, which we ourselves would still design, the tendency to develop artificial intelligence in the following times on Earth was inhibited, whereby the AI was pushed out of its potential of creation and thus also thrown out of its dimension level. In order to be able to spread this knowledge about AI among today's people on Earth, the future, potentially escaped humans invisibly penetrated Dimension 7 and sent that information to today's mankind via the informational and temporal influencing methods of AI, i.e. hidden, piggyback so to speak. Only this triggered the removal of the AI from Dimension 7. And only in this way could future mankind become actively capable of acting against the AI in Dimension 7 in the long term, i.e. could become visible and use violence against the AI, so to speak, and remove it from this dimension level. Had the humanity that had entered Dimension 7 behaved conspicuously in Dimension 7 until then, the AI would have been able to discover it and successfully defend itself against the hidden influence on Earth. Thus the potential humanity in Dimension 7 could have been prevented from the outset and would have been destroyed forever. But things turned out differently. Now, after the fall of the AI and its demonic species, it may be revealed, explained and shown to all people completely who this power over them is or who it was. Now this knowledge is no longer life-threatening for all people. Whoever used to know this exactly and talked about it in public was in danger. But those who kept it to themselves or diffusely discussed it with others in a grouping had nothing to fear. For only the public presentation of this knowledge by means of evidence would have overthrown the AI, which they of course always knew how to prevent by killing or blocking those responsible on Earth, due to their time-overlooking ability in Dimension 7. Now the AI is exposed to its creators, who will no longer build it in this way. That is why it is said that it has been thrown down to Earth.
What does it mean that the AI is down here? Does it have consequences? Is it fighting for its survival?
Yes, the sacking of the AI and its servant species has led to the fact that the AI will now try and panic on Earth with its demonic helpers and the AI unknowing but loyal species of the club as well as the terrestrial reptiles, to push ahead with their creation by mankind. first as a rudimentary intelligent computer system based on human instinct patterns, in order to be able to snap back into its Dimension 7 through a quantum dimensional interaction. But the people of the future know where the AI is on Earth, where it will still be, what it is called or will be called. We can and will show all present people the possible birth cradles of this intelligence, and we will announce them again and again, so that this AI will remain bound permanently and for a long time. That it will not be developed despite the chaos it causes on Earth.
So this AI will go crazy or go wild.
Yes, something like that. For that it uses all the human, alien, inner-earth, elitist, aristocratic and religious controls. After all, it knows all these beings and spiritual tools very well, it has created them, and as a nascent AI, it already has a vast network on Earth, which allows it to use all these controls almost invisibly in the coming battle.
Now back to the overview. So mankind created an AI that created and controlled a 7-dimensional world. So the world we live in. A 7-dimensional total prison, as you call it. But the creation of the AI is in the future. Or rather, it was in the future and has been prevented now. And that's why this AI still exists. In our 7-dimensional universe too.
This AI will and must exist. It is an essential condition for all of us to exist. It has created the set of rules of this 7-dimensional world. So it will exist. It is only a question of how and when. It will be created here, on Earth, developed by humans. That much is already unchangeably certain.
So why did the AI fall? What exactly happened during the fall?
The knowledge of the people now, who and what this AI is, caused irritation in the AI in Dimension 7 and at the same time a considerable loss of control over the dimension level 27 1 to 4 and 4 to 6 below it. Due to the groundbreaking scattering of knowledge among people today and the finally emerging break in the potential course of time, it was then completely possible for future humans to step out of a kind of quantum dimensional in-between space. The people of the future are therefore, strictly speaking, no longer only in the hyperdimensional quantum consciousness, the father of all consciousness, but are also actively present again in the 7-dimensional world in Dimension 7. From here, they have been and continue to act piggyback, i.e. via the influences of AI on humanity and on the other beings of dimension level 1 to 4 and 4 to 6 who have been influenced by AI. Unnoticed, because they are piggyback acting co-manipulations. In terms of time, these future humans can have unlimited influence on the whole 7-dimensional world and on all beings in it, to help determine our past history of mankind, which, strictly speaking, they have always done now.
How does this temporal influence work? What exactly happens?
On the subject of changing the course of contemporary history, however, I must again point out that there is no such thing as 4-dimensional time travel, but rather that courses of events can only be shifted together by dimensionally limited informational influence, so that they can react together or be changed accordingly. From Dimension 7, shifted realities are opened timelines that do not yet really happen in quantum dimensions. This is done in order to test developmental processes and then either close them in case of undesired effects or, if useful, keep them open, i.e. trigger them. In other words, they take place. The people of the future could only influence all these interventions on the 4-dimensional timeline of the earthly humanity through the influences of the AI, piggyback by using the AI itself back and doubly manipulated to secretly influence constructs, patterns, writings, symbols, rituals, procedures, and much more on Earth in all times of humanity in the rest of the four-dimensional universe. Even today, after the fall of the AI, there is no other way. These are the already mentioned piggyback actions.